Hey everybody, welcome into Rock Painting 101. I have a super fun tutorial for you guys today. I'm going to tag these with the animal rocks, but I know technically a snail's not an animal, right? I don't think so. But look at these. Aren't they adorable? So I've got the pink and purple one here, which I actually did in the tutorial you're about to see, and another color combination for you to check out as well. So if you are interested in these, stick around and make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments what color combination you're going to use for your snail. So if you follow along the page at all, you would have seen me post my little slow down snail the other day. We're going to do a second one. We're going to use a different color palette here per my daughter's request. If you follow the page, I'm sure you can guess those colors as well. She is my pink and purple queen. So I'm actually going to do my spiral the opposite way because after looking at a few more snails, it seemed like it actually attaches, it curls this way. So we're going to try to, not that these are anatomically correct, but you know, since I'm making a second one, I might as well try to make it a little bit better. You always improve your rocks. I do too. The more you paint, the more you learn. So instead of spiraling this way, we're going to spiral this way. So I'm going to off-center my spiral just a little bit to the right when I find my center of my circle or my shell. So I'm just going to start about here and I'm going to spiral my way around. Now, as I work my way out, I can make my spiral a little bit thicker if I want to. Like so. And I'm using a very gentle touch with this 1M because I don't want to splatter. These rocks are pretty smooth, but I guess it wouldn't matter all too much because I'm going to put, you know, some colors inside and such. Okay, so I've got my spiral on my rock. I'm going to start coloring in my spiral. Now for this one, I'm going to do pink and purple. So I'm going to put down my purple first on the inside of my color. So I'm just going to start here and I'm going to actually draw my lines pulling away from the center like so. So I'm almost making an invisible line from the center to the outside edge so that my colors, I'm going to blend them just a little bit. So this will take me a second. I'll speed some of this up. Okay, now I'm doing my second color. I'm doing the same thing. I'm working on the top layer of the shell. And I'm getting close to my purple, but I'm trying not to overlap too much at this point in time. I'm just pulling that color because I don't want to get the purple into my outside edge of my pink. I want to keep that a pure pink on the outside. So I'm just doing the same thing, rotating my rock, pulling those lines towards the center. Now, depending on your rock, how much the rock absorbs your paint is how easily you can blend your paint pens on your rock. Now, you can do this with acrylic paints as well. The only thing I would suggest if you're using acrylic paints is to have something for your lining, like a 1M black for the lining when you're done. And so if you're using regular paints, go ahead and blend them with your brush just right down the center. I don't have a thicker brush. I've just got a thin one. You could just take your brush and kind of, you know, do 2 layers of each color and then kind of blend. Now, since I'm working right on the rock will kind of absorb a little bit of my color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to do a purple line like so right along the seam. I'm going to work a little bit of it at a time. Now I'm going to take my pink and I'm going to just make little tiny circles right on the seam to kind of blend them, the 2 colors together. Now I'm not going for 100% perfection here. I just don't want a harsh line. So I'm just doing these tiny little circles right along the seam like so. Once I've got that little bit of purple on there, it helps. So I'm going to do again a little bit of purple right along the line because that one I put on first. And we're just making these tiny little wiggles like so. Now this worked really well with 2 light colors. The purple is quite a bit darker than the pink, so I might even do a second wiggle with my purple pen a little bit closer. We'll play with it a little bit here until we like the way it looks. We are going to be putting some lines over the top of some of this, so you don't have to go for perfection. There we go. So make sure you doodle the tip off your pen so it's back to its original color. Oop, put the correct lid on it. There we go. All right, now I'm going to take the purple right along that seam again and just kind of make a little quick wiggle along the bottom very lightly. And then I'm going to just take my brush. This is dry right now, and I'm going to kind of wiggle a little bit there too, just to kind of soften that line just a smidge. Now, if it's set too much, you can get your brush slightly wet. But you can also wash your paint off if you do that, so I don't like to get it too wet. So I'm going to kind of blend my way around here. This will take me a second to get it the way I like. Do one more area here that you can see. I'm just taking the brush and very lightly taking those bristles and kind of massaging them right into that edge a little bit. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pink back to the outside edge, but I'll check in when I'm finishing that up. Okay, so I'm just taking my core pink color and just doing a second coat on the full outer edge. Not getting close to where we blended. I'm just getting that outside edge nice and pink. Since the way that we pulled our colors, I just want to make sure that I get pink all the way to the edge, because when we were coloring this way, there might have been just a couple little gaps. All right, so our shell is well on its way. We've got to let that coat dry really well before we go over with our black lines. So I'm going to start to space out our actual snail on here. Now he will go in front of this a little bit, which is fine. We want to have space. I can have his phrase come off to the other side. If I don't put that on this time, it doesn't matter either. So we're going to start by kind of giving the ground line, his line, body line here. So you just have to decide how far you want to have the shell tilt. And then once you're happy with it, just give yourself a ground line first, like so. And then it's going to kind of curve back and in and up. Like so. I'm going to be careful not to go over that pink quite yet because it may not be completely dry. And then his eyes are way up here, and you can have one longer than the other. The thing is, they kind of scrunch in and out and stretch a lot when they're looking at stuff, so they don't have to be the same length, like so. Our pink is pretty dry, but I'm going to go ahead and fill in what I've got so far here first. Give that just another second or two. Okay, so it's getting pretty dry. So we'll go on there and very lightly, I'm not pressing down hard, I'm kind of trying to lay the paint on top. Okay, so we've got our head here. I like to have it scrunch kind of back in before it comes back out for the body. See, I'm picking up a little bit of pink there. So I'm just going to get this coat down. We can work on the actual edge of that when we are doing our lining and our second coat. Once that pink's a bit more dry. So there we go. All right, we've got the basic shape of where we're going to have our slug body. Make sure you doodle off the tip in case you got some pink on there. Now, for the shell itself, we're going to bounce back to the shell. I find it easier, so we're going to have the shell going out and away as it spirals. So it's like an arch. So it would start here, and it would arch like this. Okay? So I find it easier to put in a few arch lines in a few different places that I'm meeting them together as I'm working, because if I start here and I just try to consistently do it, I feel like I have a hard time actually getting the curve of the shell with my arches. So this little trick is just something that I like to do. And it helps me out tremendously to keep the design correctly on my rock. Now, as you get further and further around on your rock, your points are going to be closer together along the inside line than the outside line. And that's okay, because that's what kind of pulls off that tightening look. So once you've got your guidelines on, just start with any two and start your arches. And try to space them out similar. But see, as you get closer and closer together of the two ones you have there, it helps you space your outside lines, I think, a little bit better. Because you're thinking, oh, I'm getting close and I want to fit one or two more in there, you know, and you can kind of space them out. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'll speed it up a little. All right, once you've got all your spirals on there, I'm going to go ahead and do my second coat on my body here before we start lining that. So it has some time to dry. I can see some little pink streaks in my snail here. So I'm just going to go ahead and add on a second coat. Get that pink either blended in better or out of there completely. Like so. I still see a little bit of pink. Big thing, if you're impatient like me, if you go to do your second coat of something, try not to press down. Try to lay that paint on top. If you're pressing down really hard, you'll end up pulling up some of your paint underneath if it hasn't had plenty of time to dry, which I often go back at it probably a little too quick, but we make it work. All right, so once you've got your second coat on your snail, that will give that time to dry before you're lining him. We're gonna line our spiral. Now, I like to pull the direction that the spiral is going, and if that doesn't make sense. So I like to take my line and go down so that it's in the direction that it's pinching. I mean, the way that the lines are turning. That's the way I like to pull my line. I don't know if it makes a difference, but I feel like it helps you as you're doing it to make sure that your line is thick enough and you're covering any of your imperfections of where those lines meet the shell indentation, like so. I'm going to work all these outlines here. Take me just a minute. Okay, so I'm lining the outside of my snail body here. I'm going to put in 2 giant pupils up in his eyes. Okay, and then I'm going to line the bottom part of my snail. And I'm just using my black 1M. And I've got my paintbrush over here from when I was blending on my shell. So I've got 1 coat of the black along the bottom. I rinsed out my brush in water. I don't know if you can see my water, but rinse it out and then dab most of it dry. And if you just go back and forth right along where you just line your black, you can kind of wiggle just a smidge of that black loose. Now, if you're not getting any black, it could have, if you went right on the rock, it could absorb into the rock. Just wait for your first layer to dry and put a layer on top of that. Now I'm just doing this, just wiggling enough of it loose. And then I'm going to come up a little bit higher after I dry off my pen. We're just going to create the slightest shadow, not pen, brush. So I just dried off my brush again to get any extra moisture off of it. And now I'm just going to wiggle right along the seam of that shadow and my snail, just the slightest bit. And it's not a huge shadow, this isn't a huge effect, but just that little bit right along the ground line just makes sense. So make sure you rinse out your brush really good, because the pen, just like a paint, you need to rinse that off. Okay, we're almost finished, guys. Almost done. So I've got to put my little smile on my happy little snail, because I like happy little snails. Like so, and we need a little white highlight. I'm not going to put the phrase on there. That's something that's pretty easy to add on. I didn't space this guy really well for adding the phrase, so I would have to actually cover up some of my pretty shell, and I don't want to do that. I would probably have to put the phrase here And I really like how my shell turned out, so I don't think I'm going to do that. So see how that, once you've got those black lines on there, how much better that shell really blends. So there we go. Isn't he so fun? So we got our pink and purple and our blue and green. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm going to add him in with my animals. I know he's not technically an animal, but if you enjoyed this one, don't forget to subscribe and watch some more videos. We'll see you again really soon with another easy tutorial for rock painting beginners. Bye-bye.